What is going on, people of the internet? Welcome to Colonnade Broadcasting. My name is Micah Ramey. I am the founder and creator of said YouTube channel, and today we're going to be talking about Robert Pattinson's film career post-Twilight. Now, I know a lot of you guys out there, if you're watching this video, you may be mega Robert Pattinson fans, and you might be wondering if I'm going to talk about anything Twilight-related or pre-Twilight. But like the title says, no, this is all post-Twilight. I'll be honest with you guys, Robert Pattinson's film career during Twilight and before that is not really interesting to me. I don't find it that intriguing. I was never a big fan of the Twilight films, even growing up in my youth when the Twilight series were at their peak. I'll be honest with you guys, did not really like Robert Pattinson. I did honestly judge him pretty hard from the whole sparkly vampire thing. And I think it was just so mainstream. The hipster part of myself was just wanting to avoid everything Twilight, vampire at all costs. What was that other vampire show that was really big? True Blood? I feel like everything was vampires. Everything today now is superheroes, and everything back then is vampires, which kind of makes it really intriguing, Robert Pattinson's film journey as he evolves into the Batman. And we'll talk about that at the end. That'll be the conclusion, how this story kind of not wraps up, but how it's progressed so far and where we're at right now in the present time in January 2022. I don't know if you're watching this like 5 or 10 years in the future. This might be a cool little time capsule video for myself or for my kids or grandkids. If you're watching right now, I love you. Hopefully you're pretty cool. And hopefully you think I'm cool. But enough chasing rabbits. Let's talk Robert Pattinson's film career right after Twilight. So this is 2012. Is when the last Twilight film came out. Twilight Breaking Dawn Part 2. I know that seems like an eternity ago. It doesn't feel like it came out that long ago, but it is. 10 years. 10 years is it's a pretty long time. It's a decade. I'm only 24, so that's almost half of my life gone right there. And I remember just being sick of Twilight and not really caring. And I kind of turned Robert Pattinson off and everything he did for a long time. So I didn't really get involved and start tracking and following his film career until I would say probably 4 years ago when Good Time came out. It was about 4 years ago when that film came out, and I heard a lot of buzz about it, watched it, became a fan, and as the Batman started ramping up and he was casted, I went back and kind of just watched everything. I was like, God damn, this guy is incredibly talented. I'm a huge fan. But that kind of sets, I guess, my backstory and a little bit of his backstory. But let's get back into 2012. So Twilight's done. And Pattinson is just wanting to reinvent himself. He was so scared of being typecasted. And he just wanted to do something different. He wanted to stay in the acting realm. He wasn't quite sure if he wanted to keep doing that. I know he was still thinking about being a full-time musician. But he ended up getting linked up with David Cronenberg for Cosmopolis in 2012. And he was so... We're going to talk about a lot. Pattinson has a lot of self-doubt with himself. I've noticed a lot of that with the interviews he's done. He always kind of talks down on himself, doesn't have a lot of confidence. It grows over time. But at this stage in his career, you know, he was a pretty boy. He could have went the Matthew McConaughey route and kept doing some romantic comedies or anything like that. But he decided, no, like, I want to learn how to be a great actor. I want to do new projects. I want to test myself. So like I said, he linked up with David Cronenberg in Cosmopolis. And while Cronenberg was, you know, in pre-production for the film, he originally wanted Colin Farrell in the role, but with a scheduling conflicts, he couldn't cast him. So he ended up going with Robert Pattinson. And he was also kind of thinking, like, who's going to fund this super weird movie? And Pattinson was a perfect fit in both of those realms. He nailed the audition, so he could, you know, fill that need. At the same time, Robert Pattinson has a huge star power name from Twilight. People are going to go see it just because of his name alone, which helped get the movie made. And we see that happen a lot over the course of this decade. Pattinson's name alone and notoriety gets films made, and he does that intentionally. And that's not necessarily with this one, but it's just really cool, a cool thing to know that happens a lot through this decade. But I'm going to be quoting a lot of articles through this video because I think I want to be as genuine as possible with this video. And what's more genuine than information coming directly from the horse's mouth? And this is what Pattinson had to say in an IndieWire article back in 2012. I suddenly realized I had no idea how to do it at all. I knew it was really good, but I was terrified of even calling. Actors are always trained to bullshit. Even if you hate something, and I had nothing to say at all because David did the script, he obviously knows what it's about. As soon as I said, I don't know what it's about, he said, me neither. Then I spent a week trying to figure out how to get out of it, where I get to the point where I was going to have to call up and say, I'm too scared because I don't think I'm a good enough actor and I'm a pussy. I didn't want to have that conversation. I talked about that self-doubt earlier. And this is the kinesis in my Ramey review of this film. This film is the kinesis of Robert Pattinson's evolution. And I love how, I didn't love Cosmopolis as a film, but I love and appreciate and respect David Cronenberg taking Pattinson kind of under his wing and like saying, hey dude, like you got the chops for this. Like this film doesn't really make sense. And that's kind of intentional. And you see those little footprints in the future as how Pattinson tackles scripts and roles going forward. And Cronenberg was certainly that first domino piece to kind of push him in that direction and get Pattinson's film career moving forward. And I really, adore Cosmopolis and David Cronenberg for doing that.
We've been married only weeks. Barely weeks.
Everything's barely weeks. We have minutes to live.
Cosmopolis is this weird, almost dystopian, futuristic city. I'm assuming it's somewhere like New York or maybe somewhere made up, don't really know. And Pattinson plays our main protagonist, who's like the super rich billionaire yuppie. And the whole film, he's just in a limo and he's trying to get a haircut. And Robert Pattinson is all right in the film. You can kind of tell he feels a little uncomfortable, and this is something new that he's never done before. And I think some of that might be intentional things Cronenberg's telling him to do, but I think like from what we saw in the interview, it kind of comes out in the performance. And Pattinson's not necessarily bad in the film, but whenever you see his other performances, you can just tell like it's not one of his best. It's not bad, but it's not, like I said, one of his best. I wouldn't recommend, honestly, watching the movie unless you're a hardcore Robert Pattinson fan, but I do enjoy it just because of the whole story with Cronenberg. And it's, the beginning point of this film journey. So it's cool to watch Cosmopolis and then skip forward a few years and watch Good Time, or like our next film, The Rover. So The Rover is another film that Pattinson had auditioned for. He still hasn't built up a reputation yet. The only reputation he had was Twilight. So a lot of people don't necessarily take him too seriously yet. And David Michôd's only film before this was Animal Kingdom. Pretty good film if you haven't seen it. And Pattinson read the script, and he was really attracted to this character, Ray, who is this somewhat mentally disabled character with a Southern accent, hailing from somewhere in the South in the United States. So not only is Pattinson having to inflect his dialect and change that, he's playing someone who, acts kind of weird physically and has a lot of weird body language that he's going to have to portray in the film. So it was a challenge. Overall, it was a challenge for Pattinson, and that excited him. And that's what drew him to the role. And what's important about The Rover is I think it kind of builds on that mindset that Pattinson has of getting and building relationships with filmmakers. You see over time that he is constantly looking for specific styles of creators and auteurs, and he wants to work with them. He wants to partner up with them and make something new. Overall, The Rover is a fantastic film. Great performances by Guy Pearce and especially Robert Pattinson. This is the first film where I feel like Pattinson kind of proves that he's not just a typecasted actor, that he's a method actor. He can kind of chameleon himself into completely different roles. And I know I said in Cosmopolis he's good, but he's not great. In The Rover, he's fantastic. And this was the first film where he just proved that he has the chops to be in this business. One last closing statement for The Rover. There's an interview done by The Hollywood Reporter, and David Michôd, Guy Pearce, and Robert Pattinson are all on the panel asking questions. And the last question this girl asks is, what did you guys learn from each other overall from this project? And I'll just play the video now. And I think it's a very telling thing and perspective and mindset that Pattinson kind of absorbs in after this film going forward. And I know I mentioned it earlier about choosing filmmakers and learning from them, and you can hear it in this video now.
Obviously, when these characters meet, their path in life is changed by their interactions. So who in your own life has kind of changed your path in life?
Good question. I feel like I need to spend the next 15 minutes thinking about
don't have it. We don't have it.
Well, I mean, funnily enough, it's it's meeting directors, and particularly for us as actors, you work on different jobs all the time, and some change the direction of your life because they broaden your horizons in the way that you work, and others don't necessarily. But working with David, I think was a really, for me personally, it's almost like going to drama school on some sort of level, because you're made to look at things differently than you might normally.
I'm going to be sort of vague as well, and just say that for me, like every person I meet has the capacity to alter which probably just says that I'm sort of impressionable. And
Acceptable. That's right.
One thing I forgot to showcase in this video, I'm wearing this utterly ridiculous Robert Pattinson shirt. I don't know if you guys saw it or not. I feel like look like a super mega fan of him, like one of those crazy like diehard fans that, there's this woman that apparently married a cardboard cutout of Robert Pattinson in Vegas a few years back. I feel like I look like that. I just saw this. I think it was at Hot Topic or Spencer's. I mean, the stores are essentially the same. And I literally laughed out loud when I saw this shirt. I'm like, I have to wear this for this video. So here I am wearing the shirt. Okay, cut ahead to the rest of the video. Thanks, bye. Moving forward to the next film, but staying in the same year, 2014, this will take us to Maps to Stars, another David Cronenberg team up with Robert Pattinson. Even though his appearances in the film are very brief, I think he might be in the movie for a total of 10, maybe 15 minutes tops. Pattinson chose to do the film to help get it funded. Like Pattinson being in it alone attracted a lot of attention and helped get the movie made, which like I talked about earlier, Pattinson he builds these great relationships with directors, these auteurs, and helps them out along the way, especially with indie filmmakers going forward. Even though Pattinson's appearance in this film is brief, one cool thing to talk about is right before the film came out, and this film is a Hollywood satire kind of making fun of the Hollywood cultures and the Hollywood personas and actors and actresses. Pattinson sold his Hollywood home in Griffith Park, which is not far from the famed Hollywood sign. And I feel like that's kind of like him saying, kind of like a metaphor of him being like, okay, I'm selling this and I am doing different things. I'm not just doing Hollywood. I'm doing new and completely different things. And he did an interview with The Independent, and this is what he had to say about selling his home. If you're the kind of person who needs to be pushed into doing something, then Hollywood is not the right place. So I think I might be done with Los Angeles. I've just realized that in the past few weeks, continuing the topic, he adds, I think I need to spend more time in London or just move around a bit more. I've been in LA for 6 or 7 years or something, and it's weird. The more you stay there, especially as an actor, the more you think you'll need to be there, that you'll be missing out on something by leaving. But you are not really. It's a fun city though, but you are permanently on holiday there. I feel like I've been on holiday there since I was 22, and that was the year he got casted for Twilight. And lastly, from the article, after working with Cronenberg, it just opens stuff up. People sort of approach you in a different way. I think also when it got into Cannes as well, it's a pretty big film festival. Finishing off the quote, now I've done a few other things and it kind of works on a bit of a role, working with auteur guys. I think that interview really sums up well like Pattinson's mindset moving forward. I mentioned a lot of this earlier and it's just very definitive in the words he chose to speak. And I love how he knew he needed to be viewed as a different level of actor. He knew he had to do different things and he started putting in the work, and it started shifting around Maps to the Stars, his third film, second with Cronenberg, that people were starting to notice that, oh, he's not interested in Twilight or a basic romantic comedy. He's interested in these very story focused films and challenging himself. And I love that interview, and there's a lot more out there if you guys want to find them. But Pattinson is just such an interesting guy, and that's my favorite thing to take with Maps to the Stars, a Hollywood satire. Pattinson kind of saying, "Oh, I'm done with Hollywood." It's a cool little intriguing thing that kind of happens at the same time. Moving a year into the future brings us to 2015, and Pattinson played in 3 films this year, being Life, Queen of the Desert, and The Childhood of a Leader. Now I'm going to talk about the smallest appearances first, and that's Queen of the Desert and The Childhood of a Leader. Pattinson isn't in those films very long, but I'd like to talk about just a little bit of them to get them out of the way, being I don't view them as important as life is, in my opinion. Queen of the Desert is a film about this female explorer, Gertrude, can't remember her name, played by Nicole Kidman. Pattinson is portraying T.E. Lawrence, a very famous figure. And he's fine in the film. He's probably in it maybe 10, 20 minutes, very short as well, very similar to Matt's The Stars. And he's fine. He's fine. I'm not sure exactly why he chose to do this film, maybe working with Nicole Kidman. I couldn't find any interview or anything discussing why he would want to do this, but I'm assuming, like I said, working with Nicole Kidman is pretty damn cool alone, and probably just getting work and building that kind of indie, weird film reputation. And this will move us to The Childhood of a Leader, which he chose to do this film because he was friends with filmmaker Brady Corbett. And this was his first feature film, and Pattinson wanted to support his boy, so obviously he's going to be in the movie. And he kind of plays a very minor role. He is kind of a red herring character in the film, and the film story is about post-World War I France, and it's kind of the story of the rise of fascism in youth. It's a very interesting movie. I recommend it. It's not for everyone, but it is interesting, and Pattinson is fine in the movie. But yeah, let's move into Life, which I feel is a good peer into Pattinson's life as well. It's kind of a reflective film of how society treats him. And he plays Dennis Stock, who is the photographer for James Dean, the famed photographer for James Dean. And in an interview, people ask him, why were you trying to be James Dean? And that kind of also links back into the messages I talked about earlier, Pattinson having self-doubt. He didn't feel worthy to audition for the role of James Dean. And I ended up going to Dane DeHaan. And Pattinson just played the photographer in an interview. And one of the interviews he did, they were asking him, like, did the film feel weird to you to do things like this? And he mentioned how weird it is to be Robert Pattinson. He can never really fully be himself, maybe in film, but not necessarily in just like normal life. Like anywhere Pattinson walks, paparazzi are going to come out of nowhere. And that's partly why he left Hollywood, is just to get out of that. He talked about that in an interview where moving away and back to London, like he could just walk around and people weren't, following him and stalking him. He talked about while he was filming Live, there were paparazzi like hidden up in trees and different buildings, taking photos of him every second. And having to play a character who's taking photos of a very famous person, if not one of the most famous actors, in all of cinema history. And I think Pattinson, at the highlight of his career during that time is, it's pretty similar to somewhat of what James Dean was going through, I would say. And it said it was a weird, peer into the other side of things, playing a character, taking pictures of James Dean. James Dean invites this guy to his house and he kept taking pictures of him there, but they built this kind of relationship, this bondship and brothership that you see in the film, which I think is really intriguing. And it's not like that today with paparazzi. They're just kind of, assholes for the most part. There's that really famous video of Tobey Maguire telling the paparazzi to get out of the way. And he's like, get the fuck out of the way. I can't see, motherfucker. It's awesome.
Hey guys, get the fuck out of the way. I can't see. There are cars there, motherfucker. Get out of the way.
They're stopped for you, dude.
We're blocking the cars for you. Thank you, Spider-Man.
I love that video. Also love Tobey Maguire. But yeah, we'll move forward into the video. I really think these next films in 2016 through 2017 are really like where Pattinson fully starts transforming. And I really want to talk about the second one, but the first one, let's talk about the lost city of Zed. I'm pretty sure I'm pronouncing that right. I know it's just a Z, but in the film they say Zed. And I've heard people in other videos say Zed, so I'm just going to say Zed. And yet again, Pattinson wanted to work with a specific filmmaker, this time being James Gray. He was big fans of his films We Own the Night and Two Lovers. And this film was a huge test for Pattinson physically. This film is about a English explorer in the early 1900s, right before World War I and after World War I, them exploring South America, going deep into the Amazon, trying to find this ancient, kind of futuristic civilization. And they go to Colombia and film a lot there in the jungles. And I never really, you don't think about it when you're watching the movie because you're kind of just captured by the moments and you feel involved, but you never think about the process of the movie. And I guess that is the movie magic, but they talk about, like the sets flooding, rain being everywhere all the time. And they're actually using film. They're not doing it digitally, so that kind of makes it even more difficult. And they're talking about rowing upstream and bugs everywhere, and it sounds like a pretty chaotic film set. One that's definitely going to be memorable. I can relate to that. You know, being deployed, like I've had tents flood. It's not fun. I'll tell you that. Walking to work in like a foot of mud and just water pouring like over your boots. It's not fun. I'll tell you right now, it's not fun. So I kind of related to that in a way. But I'm sure, you know, getting that gigantic millionaire or whatever, how many paycheck probably made it worth it. So I'll probably choose filming the movie over the deployment. Pattinson in the film plays this kind of support role character to Charlie Hunnam's main protagonist character. And he's silent for the most part, but Pattinson has this full-on beard for the movie and these like kind of like Harry Potter monocle glasses. And he fades away. I forget, I don't know, about an hour and a half in the movie, I forgot I was watching the movie for Robert Pattinson. He just fades away. And then I kind of had to remember, oh yeah, wasn't that Pattinson? And he lost all the weight too. Like they were eating like, I think like an apple or so a day just to lose weight while they were out there in Colombia to, you know, get fit for the roles. So I really respect Robert Pattinson physically. You know, this is the first big physical challenge for him when it comes to acting. And I think that's really cool. And in an interview for this film that he did with Collider, the interviewer asked him, interviewer asked him, would you ever like to do the superhero genre one day? And this is what Pattinson had to say. Yeah, for sure. I just feel like it has to feel right. And you have to, it's partly the same thing. I feel like you have to earn something with an audience. If I just did it now, I think producers on any superhero movie, I think they wouldn't trust me to do the way I'd want to do it because I'd want to do something basically really strange. I think you have to earn that freedom to do stuff like that. So I think if I keep kind of chipping away, trying to do good movies and interesting, strange movies, then people will eventually trust you to do that on a bigger scale. And now I'm, you know, talking about that superhero genre interview. We're starting to get into the kind of beginnings of Pattinson becoming Batman. And to link this to Christian Bale in a cool way, I think. Good Time for Pattinson is what American Psycho was for Christian Bale. Before Christian Bale, you know, he was a childhood actor in Empire of the Sun with, you know, a Steven Spielberg film and doing other things before that. He wasn't really taken that seriously. He wasn't really viewed as a transformative method actor, A-list actor. And when American Psycho came out, it changed things. Christopher Nolan's talked about that before with Bale in American Psycho. You could feel his power in the film. You could feel his intensity, just his beautifully raw and insane performance that Christian Bale had in American Psycho kind of just proved that he was legit. He was a real deal. One of the best actors working today, and it helped get him the role of Batman eventually a few years later. And I think a lot of those same traits can be said for Pattinson in Good Time. Matt Reeves has talked about it specifically about he could feel the power of Pattinson in Good Time. And we'll talk about that later on at the end of this video, Matt Reeves and how he got involved and noticed Robert Pattinson. But sticking with Good Time, this was for sure Robert Pattinson's breakout performance. If I could recommend only one film from this video that you need to watch, it is certainly Good Time. I know Pat's has talked about he wants to do things that are absolutely crazy, and Good Time does definitely fit in that category. It is still a very marketable film. I think anyone can watch Good Time and get something from it. There are some things in the film that are very uncomfortable, which kind of comes with an A24 film. If you've seen any type of A24 films, they're all about doing new and crazy things. And I forgot to mention earlier that Pattinson ends up working with A24 a lot. His first being the Rover. Forgot to mention that. Thank you, notes. But yeah, I mean, just it's a great film. It's very watchable, and you know, Pattinson, it's really cool. I think he was doing stuff for the Rover at the time, and he saw a still. He didn't see a movie. He saw a still for the Safdie brothers film Heaven Knows What. I think he saw it on a website or something, and it was like this woman with this pink shit all over her face, and he was just kind of drawn in by this image. Hadn't even seen the movie. And he just was, I guess, enthralled with the cinematography or something. And he reached out to them. He emailed them. And I think I forgot to mention this as well. Like, Pattinson does a lot of this himself. Like, he has his agents reach out at certain points, but a lot of times he just directly emails people. So he emailed the Safdie brothers and was like, hey, like, I'm really interested in working with you guys. And they had never seen Twilight, but they honestly, like, they knew who Robert Pattinson was. Everyone knows who Robert Pattinson is. I could ask my stepfather if he knew who Robert Pattinson is, and he's never seen Twilight. He'd probably know. There's this really great interview of the trio, the two brothers and Robert Pattinson, with The Vulture. And Pattinson talks about how he is training to become Connie Nikas, and he's only eating tuna. He's trying to be as dirty as possible. So he's exclusively eating tuna for every meal, and he's just eating the cans and throwing them in this like apartment basement he was staying in New York. And he didn't take the trash out. He left everything as dirty as possible just to become dirty physically and mentally for this role. And whatever the fuck he did, other than that, it worked for the movie. He's fantastic in it. After getting emailed by Pattinson, the two brothers like went to the producer and they were like, what are we supposed to do? We're so single track minded right now. What should we do? And the producer's like, you fucking email his ass back. Like, he's going to help you get a film made. Like, his name alone will fund the movie. One last segment from the article I'd like to highlight is the Safdie brothers talking about Connie's character in this quote. Connie is a very heroic person, and that he's not willing to accept his situation. He does a lot of despicable things in the movie, but he is doing it in the name of a dream, a vision, a purpose. That sounds a lot like Batman. Honestly, I think he takes a lot of his performance in Good Time and he brings that into the Batman in the future. We'll talk about that more later on, but I just want to highlight that now. But certainly overall, Good Time is the ultimate Robert Pattinson film. It is a film, the first film he did, I believe, that truly he took what he learned from David Cronenberg and David Michaud and broke out of his shell and became Robert fucking Pattinson. This was his breakout performance. This is his American Psycho. It is a must watch. If you haven't seen it, what are you doing watching this video? You could be watching Good Time by the Safdie brothers. This will move us forward into 2018. And in this year, Pattinson stars in Damsel and High Life. Let's talk about Damsel first. This is Pattinson's first comedic role in a long time. I know the Twilight movies are hilarious just to watch now because they suck so bad, but they weren't intentionally trying to be comedies. This is Pattinson's first time doing a comedy again, and it is another brother duo director, Bruo. You could just call the Safdie brothers, just the Safdie Bruos. The Coen brothers, the Coen Bros, the Zellner brothers. Okay, I'm done with that. Let's move on. David and Nathan Zellner were filmmakers that Pattinson reached out to. But originally they sent him, first time this time was new. They sent him the script for Damsel, and he read it and he wasn't quite sure like it would get the funding, even with Pattinson getting involved with it. He wasn't quite sure like this project was for him or it would even get funded. So he's like, whatever, it's not for me. So a few weeks later, Pattinson goes to the movie theater and he sees the film Komiko, the Treasure Hunter. And he really enjoyed it. And he called up his agent. He's like, hey, agent guy, John, that I just watched this movie, Komiko. It's pretty damn good. Do you mind getting me in contact with the filmmakers? And his agent's like, dude, they literally sent you the script and you said it sucked. What are you talking about, man? You need to email them back. So eventually he emailed him back and he got back and ended up doing Damsel, which is kind of hilarious for a comedy film that Pattinson getting the role is quite humorous, very fittingly. But Pattinson was uncomfortable with doing this. Everything he'd done before that just kind of kept ramping up on the crazy meter. Good Time being the craziest thing he did up until that point. But, Damsel is a comedy. And it does get crazy later on in the film. It kind of disguises itself as this just comedy movie, like comedy drama maybe. But Pattinson plays his character Samuel Alabaster. How hilarious is that name? Samuel Alabaster. I feel like you had to say the word alabaster with a southern accent. But Pattinson plays this kind of goofy cowboy character, and he's on the hunt for his wife or his beloved who has been stolen from him. And he has this stupid guitar on his back, and he's walking around with like this pony. He looks like an idiot. And there's a moment in this film where, and it's probably one of my favorite parts of the film, but while filming, Pattinson wasn't sure if he was being funny or not because he's never been in a comedic role. So he didn't know like if he had the timing or if he was sucking because nobody was laughing. And he wrote this original song. And if you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. It's a song called Honey Bun. And Pattinson actually wrote the song himself and put it in the movie. And it was the first time he got the crew to laugh. The boom mic operator was actually laughing while he was, holding the boom mic. And after that, Pattinson was kind of reassured, okay, I do have it. I think this movie is going to be something I can do. And it's another way for Pattinson to test himself. He's doing like all this crazy shit beforehand. And now he's doing some a lot more low key, but a completely different genre, which may not seemingly be as hard, but comedy is hard. I know some people out there have seen movies that are supposed to be funny, like take Holmes and Watson, for example, that Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly movie. The movie sucked. It's supposed to be a comedy, but it's just super boring and sucked. Pattinson, didn't want that. It's hard to do comedy. Timing is so important, and I think Pattinson definitely has the chops for more comedic films. And you kind of see some like dark comedic films he does in the future, but let's move on to the next set of films. Still staying in the year 2018, Pattinson then sought out to work with famed French director Claire Denis. And he has been a fan of hers for a while. She's done really weird art housey stuff. And the movie High Life, another A24 film, is certainly the most art housey thing Pattinson has done. I still think to date, The Lighthouse may usurp that, but I think High Life is probably the overall strangest film Pattinson has been in, coming from a French director who's notorious for doing just the weirdest shit. And the challenge in High Life was body acting and this weird, contortion and getting comfortable in your own skin. Pattinson's talked about in interviews that High Life really challenged him because he's shirtless for a lot of the movie. And after doing Twilight, there's not many films with him being shirtless. He talked about like he is a little self-conscious about his body. That kind of ties into that self-doubt thing in his head. But, after being, you find out a woman married your cardboard cutout, you probably feel a little creepy about, exposing yourself in any type of way. People just, how many girls are obsessed with him? He's probably a little uncomfortable about it. So that challenged him more in a kind of like psychological realm of getting comfortable in your own skin. And if you've seen High Life, holy fuck, you got to be comfortable in your own skin. Movie is out of its goddamn mind. I'm not a big fan of High Life, I'll be honest with you. Pattinson's performance is fine in the film. Everyone's performance is honestly fine in the film, but it's just super weird. It's like this space odyssey in a way where these people who have committed like horrible crimes that are like on death row can volunteer to go out into, instead of dying, go on a spaceship, and they basically go into a black hole and then come back out to absorb its energy and come back to Earth. And they're probably going to die. It's probably a suicide mission. And that's why they send out like these horrible convicts. And you find out over time, like, what these people have done and how horrible it is. And every character is fucked up in some type of way. But the film wasn't really for me. It was a little bit too weird. I love weird shit, but it was just like it was a completely different realm for me. But I do like how Pattinson got some out of it. He learned to get more comfortable in his own skin, the body contortion, and just doing weird shit. At least he got some out of it, because honest with you guys, I really didn't. And Pattinson certainly did learn a lot of things about acting coming from High Life and taking that directly into his next film, The Lighthouse, which is just sublime, a masterpiece. I love The Lighthouse. And another A24 film, 2 in a row, High Life and then The Lighthouse. A film coming from Robert Eggers, who directed The Witch. That's a great film as well, a great horror film. Pattinson saw that film, was very attracted to his style of work, and he really liked his editing skills and how precise he was about everything. He talked about when filming for The Lighthouse, whenever they were at The Lighthouse, like they would open up the drawers in the film and like all the silverware would say like 1910, Harbor Freight, whatever. Like it was all like everything was, there was so much attention to detail with Robert Eggers. So he learned that with Eggers, just insane attention to detail. And I talked about how he took in the body morphing and contortions into The Lighthouse. He didn't have to do it as much, but there are a lot of scenes in The Lighthouse that are requiring Pattinson to be comfortable in his own skin and do weird shit. one scene, or honestly a few scenes in particular. But what's great about The Lighthouse is that he kind of takes in that comedic element and not really know. Also, from Cosmopolis, when he told David Cronenberg, I don't really know what this film's about. Cronenberg's like, I don't either. And there's a lot of films coming on later on where Pattinson doesn't really know what the film's about, but he's just kind of like, fuck it, I'm here, let's do it, and let's just react organically. And I think that's what makes his performances so raw and feel so real, is because he actually is, kind of, like I said, reacting as this is the first time he's like kind of read the script and knows what's going on. He doesn't really understand the film, just like the audience. So I think that's why it just seems more relatable, as he's reacting in a way that we kind of not really expect, but we can accept. And Pattinson is just, at this point in his career in The Lighthouse in 2019, I think he's kind of solidified himself as a tier actor. Like after Good Time and in High Life, he's all right, but Good Time and Lighthouse are the two, I think, most important performances when it comes to Robert Pattinson. I don't know how, I can understand watching Good Time and not liking it, but his performance is so good. I cannot understand watching The Lighthouse I can understand watching The Lighthouse and not liking it, but what I can't understand is watching The Lighthouse and not being like, this guy is a just freaking amazing actor. Him and Willem Dafoe bounce off each other so incredibly well, and their descent into this dark madness is so intriguing to watch. That's why I just love this film. The performances are fantastic. The descent into utter craziness is awesome. And Pattinson is just so good at playing unhinged characters. And we've learned that over time. Like, the crazier Pattinson needs to be, the better he is, and the more comfortable he seems to be. And in an interview with the Vox, Pattinson talks about what roles he decides to do by saying this: when you get a part where you can just go hard with it, and it's just so extreme, it's so much fun doing it, the danger is you kind of just want to make every part crazy and just ratchet the intensity up as high as possible. This was just one of those great experiences and a joy to do. I hope to keep finding stuff like that again. I want everything to be as crazy as this. Enough of The Lighthouse. Let's move on to The King, a Netflix produced film. And this is Pattinson linking back up yet again with David Michôd, the same guy that did The Rover. And I forgot to mention that Pattinson works a lot with Joel Edgerton. Michôd and Joel Edgerton have been really close buddies ever since Animal Kingdom, and Joel Edgerton helped co-write The Rover, and Joel Edgerton actually had a small performance in Life in that movie, very brief, but he was in that movie. And he also stars and helps write the King. And Pattinson, adding in a little comedic element, I think, that he learned from Damsel. He plays the son of a French king, and he is just the biggest douchebag of all time. This guy is hilarious. His French accent is like almost bad, like really bad, but really good at the exact same time. And it works really well into this like giant kind of like ball of just hilariousness. I loved Pattinson in The King. He is super. The way he talks to Timothée Chalamet, that's whatever his name is, which is really weird that dude's French, right? And he plays the English king. Pattinson is English, and he plays this French king. Kind of weird. And but Pattinson plays the French king beautifully. Timothée Chalamet's great in it. Joel Edgerton's fantastic in it. But I love Pattinson in that film. He's really good at playing like these crazy characters. And he talked about in that interview I just mentioned in The Lighthouse. He's just, I don't know what it is. He just talked about how much fun it is to be these crazy people. Like, you can't just act that way in normal life. And like, I guess given the ability to just kind of be an asshole for a few minutes on set, has to be a lot of fun. I wouldn't know anything about that, but Pattinson seems to be enjoying himself a lot. And you can definitely see elements of Damsel in The Lighthouse, or not The Lighthouse, in The King. Very realistic, but not really realistic takes on moments in history in a way. Their stories are somewhat similar. The King is a lot more of a drama, a lot more serious, but there are moments of levity. And Robert Eggers, David Michôd talked about that he wanted Pattinson to kind of be over the top with the role. And Pattinson is famously doesn't use dialect coaches for a lot of his works. He just kind of goes in to the role and studies it and learns it himself, which is super cool. And the last film of 2019 is Waiting for the Barbarians, a film he starred along with Johnny Depp and Mark Rylance, a first English feature film for the Colombian director Ciro, hopefully I'm pronouncing this right, Ciro Guerrera. And the film is based off I believe a book from the 1980s. It's like the story of this like made up kingdom, kind of similar, being similar to like a powerful European country in like the early 1900s. And basically they have this like outpost out in the middle of this like deserty area, and like these barbarians, which are the natives of the area, they are thinking that they're planning an attack. The natives are planning like a secret attack on this fort. And Johnny Depp is like one of the main leaders. He's sent in to find out like what's going on about this attack. And he's kind of a douchebag. And Pattinson plays his right-hand man. I don't know for you guys, this looks like my right hand. I don't know. He plays his right-hand man. And his role is very brief in the film. So there's not really much to say. He's fine. And Johnny Depp is pretty damn good. So is Mark Rylance. But the film overall is okay. Wouldn't recommend it for a Pattinson fan, but it's fine if you want to watch it. Johnny Depp, go Johnny Depp. Fuck Amber Heard, go Johnny Depp. Okay, this brings us to the year 2020. We're getting closer and closer to present day. And let's talk about The Devil All the Time and Tenet. And for The Devil All the Time, it was not just the filmmaker that attracted Pattinson to the role, it was the role itself, a preacher. Pattinson, in an interview that I read, that he always kind of wanted to play a preacher. He said it's a type of role where you can go crazy with it, and the performance itself kind of is justified as at least to that character. Like they view their actions as righteous. And if you've seen The Devil All the Time, you know that his character is this huge piece of shit, but he's a preacher, and he uses his power to kind of manipulate these young girls into doing things in the Lord's name. And it's really fucked up. And Pattinson, like, he fades away in the movie, and you just want to fucking strangle this guy. And he's delusional. He's absolutely delusional. Pattinson's great in the film. He talked about how he always wanted to be a preacher, play a preacher, and I think he does it fantastically. And I talked about in the last film, or in The King, yeah, one of the last films, The King. Pattinson doesn't use dialect coaches. He likes to force to learn it on his own. And the director of The Devil All the Time was like super like nervous, like going in like, Pattinson, like you need this dialect coach, dude. This is something you never done before. You're doing like a Southern accent. Even though he did do the Southern accent in the Rover, the director was still nervous. Like, hey man, like I want to make sure you're nailing this. Pattinson's like, dude, I got this, bro. I'll learn. And so he just shows up to set on the first day of filming without, no one heard his accent, and he said he just absolutely nailed it, which is really cool. And I also noticed in this interview that maybe me and Pattinson have a connection ourselves. If you look very closely in this video, you can see the shirt that Pattinson's wearing. It's like this kind of retro green, red, blue, yellow striped shirt. Now I want everyone to just look at Pattinson's shirt, as creepy as that sounds. Look at his shirt and memorize it. Okay, now you got it? All right, you got it. Okay, now that you guys have that perfect image in your head of Pattinson in that super cool retro shirt, I want you to take a look at me. You're probably wondering, Micah Ramey, how did you get Robert Pattinson's shirt? And I will do my best to explain that in a short story. So I went to Virginia Beach a few months ago for like a little vacation with my girlfriend, and me and her frequent like thrift shops to just go find clothes or records or something cool. And I saw this shirt in there, and I'm like, wow, this is like a super cool like retro styled shirt. And if we do our math right, The Devil All the Time came out in 2020. He did probably the interview, whatever, for the film around the same time. I went to Virginia Beach last year, being 2021, if my math is correct. So who's to say that Robert Pattinson doesn't frequent Virginia Beach, got tired of the shirt for some reason and dropped it off at the thrift shop. And now your boy's wearing it, and now I'm making a video about it. And I happen to search online and find the video, and it's all connected, and this is destiny. I don't know what else to say about that. That's pretty fucking damn cool. Moving on from The Devil All the Time, let's get to Tenet. And this is a very intriguing film, mainly because obviously this is a Christopher Nolan film. And if you're a cinephile of any level, you know Christopher Nolan not only is like the guy saving old school cinema, he did the Dark Knight trilogy, starting with Batman Begins in 2005. And he is just one of the best filmmakers, not only working today, but one of the best filmmakers of all time, in my opinion. He's one of my favorite. Every time a Nolan film comes out, I am there. And he became a fan of Pattinson over the last, 8 or 9 years of him building this great filmography. And he realized that, like, hey, this guy has the stuff. And Christopher Nolan is at that point in his career where he doesn't need to cast certain actors. He can cast anyone he wants. I mean, he's worked with Hugh Jackman, Christian Bale, Michael Caine, Morgan Freeman. The list goes on and on. Leonardo DiCaprio, Matt Damon. Like, he's worked with some of the best actors, in cinema the last, 20, 30 years. So he doesn't need to waste his time casting someone. He casted John David Washington on purpose. Denzel, I almost forgot Denzel Washington's name, Denzel Washington's son. And he casted Robert Pattinson because he's a fucking good actor. I think that Christopher Nolan casting Pattinson is enough proof alone that Pattinson is a real deal. Like, Nolan's not going to waste his time with, a jabroni actor just for the name. Christopher Nolan's name is big enough to sell a movie. He doesn't need Robert Pattinson to do that for him. And like I said, I think that's proof enough of Pattinson's prowess and his acting skills and ability. And what's cool about Tenet is that on the first day of filming for Tenet a few weeks ago, Pattinson went to audition for the role of Batman, and he still hadn't heard anything back whether he got it or not, even though he kind of already knew he had it. And on the morning of the first day of Tenet, he got a phone call from Matt Reeves saying, "Hey, dude, you want to be Batman?" And that kind of added to, just this, it makes the story a lot more cooler, like he's working on a new Christopher Nolan movie, the guy that fundamentally saved not just Batman, but comic book movies, reinvented them in a different way. Batman Begins alone changed the course of not just superhero film, but it changed James Bond's trajectory. Casino Royale was a direct result of Batman Begins. So Christopher Nolan's the fucking dude. And Pattinson getting the role of Batman on the first day of shooting for Tenet is just something really cool. I just think the stars were kind of aligning in that. Something was just telling Pattinson, or maybe it was the universe. I don't know if you guys are religious or not. Maybe the universe was just telling him, "Hey, dude, you're fucking meant to be Batman." Who knows? And in an interview with the Irish Times, Pattinson talks a little bit about keeping secrets from Christopher Nolan about going and shooting stuff for the Batman, which I think is kind of hilarious and really intriguing. And I'll read that stuff to you now. It's funny because Chris is so secretive about everything to do with his movies. And then I had to be really secretive about Batman stuff. So I had to lie to Chris about having to go for a screen test. I said I had a family emergency. And as soon as I said it's a family emergency, he said, "You're doing the Batman edition, aren't you?" And I think that article is just super cool. Pattinson's trying to play it all cool. Like, "Oh yeah, I got a family emergency. I have to leave." And Nolan's just like, "Cut the bullshit, dude. You're going to be Batman, aren't you?" And Pattinson's probably like, yeah, I'm going to go do the Batman thing. And they say in the interview that they never really talked about it during the production of Tenet. Their sole focus was Tenet. But towards the end of the film, Pattinson was like, "Oh, any advice? What should I do for this?" And Nolan was just kind of like, "Yo, man, do your own thing. Like, you got it. Like, you're one of the best actors today. Like, I fully trust that you're going to nail this." Yeah, I don't think Pattinson needed that, vote of confidence. But, from where he was with going into Cosmopolis, relationships and support from filmmakers are so important and vital to actors. I can't understate this. I hope other filmmakers realize, like, building up actors and supporting them and letting them know, like, "Hey, dude, you can do this." And this goes into any realm, like any job with any boss and a subordinate. Like, sometimes people need someone to believe in them before they can believe in themselves. And again, I have so much respect for David Cronenberg for believing in Pattinson before he believed in himself. And this dude's the fucking Batman now, dude. It's just pretty damn cool. And he completely shifted his career going forward. But I think that's going to do it for every film Pattinson's been in since the Batman. It's time to talk a little bit about Batman pre-production and how he got the role, and Matt Reeves envisioning writing the character with Pattinson in mind. And this all comes from the Esquire article. And I'm going to be I'm not going to reference anything specifically, but I am just going to be talking about it in general. And Matt Reeves got the gig for the Batman in 2017 with Ben Affleck still attached to it. So he still had his script. Ben Affleck stepped down as director, but Matt Reeves is still expected to adapt his script and just step in as director. But Matt Reeves is like, hey, like, I'll still do this. I mean, I'm excited. I want to do this. But for now, like, I'm going to finish War for the Planet of the Apes. And we'll talk about this later. So he was fully focused on Planet of the Apes, not thinking about Batman yet at all. And he finished that film, which is fantastic, dude. I mean, if you guys haven't seen the Planet of the Apes, the last two were done by Matt Reeves. There's such a step up in quality. Like from the first scene of Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, that camera dropped down into the redwood forest in California, right on Caesar's face, is just beautiful cinematography, which I know we'll see in the Batman. But Matt Reeves, great director. He finished production on Planet of the Apes, and he basically went to Warner Brothers and was like, after reading the script, and he said the script was very similar to like a James Bond type of film that Affleck wrote, and he really liked it, and it was very action packed and had appearances from other superhero characters, from other DC characters. But he basically told Warner Brothers like, hey, like the script is great, but I don't think I'm the guy you guys want. Like I'm gonna need a lot more of a personal touch in this film. Like no disrespect to Ben Affleck or anyone, but like I'm going to need like full control of this thing to make the ultimate Batman movie and to give my personal touch and to do the best job I think I can possibly do. I'm gonna need all creative freedom. Like I can't have he didn't say like, oh, kick Ben Affleck out. This is already like Ben Affleck was kind of stepping away. So it was kind of like a perfect point where Matt Reeves wanted to have the creative freedom to make the Batman movie he wanted to make. And then Ben Affleck at the same time, was struggling with depression and his addiction to alcohol and just in a really bad place mentally, which he's a lot better now, which is great to see. But Ben Affleck just wasn't in the right, state of mind. And I think everyone can relate to that at some point in their life. So he stepped down as a role of Batman. He kind of felt the same way Matt Reeves did. Like, if he wasn't going to be able to do it 110%, then he felt like fans deserved better. And Matt Reeves felt the same way. So it was kind of a cool crossing, passing of the baton to Matt Reeves, and Warner Brothers was like, yo, dude, like, we're sold on what you want to do. Like, we saw what you did with the last two Apes films and Cloverfield. Like, go ahead. Here's the keys. Do whatever the fuck you want. And when Matt Reeves went in full on in this film, I think production, like he started fully onto the film in 2018, like writing it and figuring what he wanted to do. He obviously had to think about actors around the age of Batman he wanted to play. And he started thinking about actors. And the first actor he thought of was obviously Robert Pattinson. He saw Good Time a year ago or 2 years ago to that date. And became a huge fan of Pattinson. The power he showed on screen, his violence, how much he could be in control, his, how insane he could get, his range, and his other films as well. But he said Good Time was that film that kind of sold him on Robert Pattinson, and he was just kind of dead set on Robert Pattinson being his Bruce Wayne Batman. So he wrote the character of Bruce Wayne that we'll see in the Batman with Robert Pattinson in mind, which is really cool. And at this stage of Robert Pattinson's career, I think it was like 2018, 2019 when he got, I think 2019, late 2019, Robert Pattinson was confirmed for the Batman. I want to say it was like August timeframe, 19. And goddamn, I'm out of breath for talking so long. But Pattinson heard the rumblings of a new Batman movie. He heard Matt Reeves was attached to it. And again, like we've talked about so many times over this decade, Pattinson was a fan of Matt Reeves' work. So the combination of a new Batman story and Matt Reeves had him intrigued. And Pattinson had been a gigantic fan of Batman his entire life. And so was Reeves as well, a huge Batman fan. And he's talking to his agents like, oh, what do you guys know about the Batman thing? And they were all kind of like, Batman, like, you don't do mainstream stuff anymore. Tenet was his first, I forgot to mention that. Tenet was like his first foray into something mainstream in, it was like eight or 9 years, a super long time. And Tenet doesn't really, I don't think qualifies mainstream. It's Christopher Nolan's pretty much an indie director, just making huge films. but it obviously is a lot more mainstream than High Life. But obviously Batman, one of the most famous, if not the most famous comic book character of all time, one of the most famous film characters of all time. It was weird to his agents that Pattinson would be drawn to Batman, but it was obviously for a specific reason. His love for the character and Matt Reeves' involvement is what sold Robert Pattinson. So Robert Pattinson went to audition for the role, and it was kind of just love at first sight based on this article. They synced up instantly, and basically from that audition, Robert Pattinson was Matt Reeves' Batman. And that's just a really cool story how Matt Reeves wrote the story with Robert Pattinson in mind, and he ended up, having genuine interest. He had no idea Robert Pattinson. He never met him before. He had no idea he was interested in doing this. It just kind of happened. Oh, Robert Pattinson wants to be in your movie. And he was like, oh, let's fucking go. Just an aligning of the stars. There's a lot of that over the last 10 years of Robert Pattinson's career that are just very Batman-esque. And I've been dreaming of doing this video for a long time, and this is the part that I thought was just the most interesting about it, and how there's so much symbolism in Pattinson's career. Pattinson was at the height of Hollywood. He had no reason to not keep doing big budget movies. He could have kept doing romantic comedies. He could have been in the Marvel Cinematic Universe probably if he wanted to be. He could have done anything. What did Pattinson choose to do? He decided, I'm going to do movies that no one really cares about, and I'm going to hone my craft, and I'm going to learn. What does Batman do? What is Batman's normal origin story? He's a super, incredibly rich, multi-billionaire, young adult, and he had no reason to, quit this life of luxury, throw it away to travel the world and learn how to fight crime and learn how to be Batman. He had no reason to do that. No justification. He did it just on his own, just so he could learn and be a better person, because he was so self-motivated. And I think that's what ties Robert Pattinson to the character of Batman in a way that no other actor really has. Not only is he a lifelong fan of Batman, but he had everything. And he said, fuck that. I'm just thinking of that scene in Batman Begins where Christian Bale, he has a gun. He's going to kill, is he going to kill Falcone? He was going to kill the guy that, Joe Chill, that killed his parents. And he goes and sees, he's about to go see Falcone, and Rachel slaps him in the face. That scene's so funny to me now. But I'm thinking of the scene where he has a gun and he's staring at it, and he gets a flash to Joe Chill, and he realizes, holy fuck, I'm just as bad as Joe Chill, and he takes that gun. That's Robert Pattinson metaphorically throwing Twilight and all of Hollywood away to go travel the world and be in the Rover, be in a High Life, be in a Damsel, be in a Lighthouse, be in a Good Time, be in a Waiting for the Barbarians, be in Tenet, be in these different movies and learn new things and, become a more well-rounded actor. And when it was time for Pattinson to come back into mainstream, time for Bruce Wayne to come back to Gotham, he is, and this is the answer for both of these things, he decides to be Batman. How fucking cool is that? That's pretty damn cool. I've been waiting for a long time to share that with the internet. I think that's a pretty cool thing that I noticed. I'm sure someone else probably did too, but I just think Robert Pattinson is just probably the overall most perfect casting, most best fit for Batman that the film industry has ever gotten. I have so much confidence in him. And from what we've seen in the trailers, this guy is going to absolutely knock it out of the park. He is an A-list actor. And I know 20, 30 years from now, he's going to be a Joaquin Phoenix. He's going to be a Leonardo DiCaprio. He's going to be a Brad Pitt. He's going to be a Robert De Niro. He's going to be viewed as one of those actors, especially after the Batman. Even George Clooney's talked about how Batman, launched his career forward. And I don't think Pattinson necessarily needs Batman. He definitely doesn't need Batman. But him choosing to do Batman just shows how much faith I have in this project. If Pattinson's choosing to do it, it's definitely something good. And before I close this video, I'd like to share a few things from the Esquire magazine specifically. And this is Matt Reeves talking about Robert Pattinson. Of course, the idea to fit with the year one story was to make him a younger actor. And in the process of writing the movie, I watched the fantastic 2017 Safdie Brothers film, Good Time. And I thought, okay, he's got an inner kind of rage that connects with this character and a dangerousness, and I can feel this desperation. And I became dead set on it being Rob. And I had no idea if Rob had any interest because, of course, he had done all these indie movies after he established himself in Twilight. He heard that we were doing this and got excited about the idea that there was going to be another version of this character. And so when I met him and he read the script, we talked for a long, long time. And I realized this guy is a massive fan. And this is going to be the conclusion of the video right here. I want to end it on this quote. And I think this kind of perfectly summarizes everything from the video, from Robert Pattinson's journey, from Twilight to now. And then I also talked about the importance of hearing it from the horse's mouth. And this is from Matt Reeves himself. And I really feel like if I wanted to make this video, all I really needed to do was just quote the great Matt Reeves. But the people who were excited, I knew it was because they knew Rob's work post-Twilight. The people who weren't excited, I knew it was because they didn't know Rob's work post-Twilight. Thank you, Matt Reeves. And I think with that, I'm going to conclude this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you made it this far in the video, what the fuck is wrong with you? Don't you have something else to do with your life? But if you made it this far, please consider subscribing, liking the video, sharing it, disliking it, not subscribing, whatever you want to do. Have a great day. You know, how about just have a great day? That's all I really care about. But yeah, I'm going to conclude this video. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Got to turn the camera off. Okay, bye. Love you.